How we doing, guys? Welcome to DT's Daily. Now we're going to be taking a look back on Wednesday's Champions League matches. We're also going to be taking a look at last night's Europa League matches. And the question I'm going to ask today is, do you think Eddie Howe will still be in a job next season?
How we doing, guys? Welcome to DT's Daily. That's right.
So first place we're going to start is Wednesday night's Champions League action. All the group stages are done. We know who are in the knockout rounds. We know who could potentially get who. And some interesting results there. We're going to start off with the ones that were not really of any meaning because they were kind of already done. Manchester City, really good result away from home against Red Star considering all of the changes. 3-2 winners in that one. Leipzig winning 2-1 against Young Boys. Barcelona losing 3-2 to Antwerp. Porto 5-3 against Shakhtar Donetsk. Celtic winning in Europe, finally. Atletico Madrid beating Lazio 2-0. And this, of course, are the results and the group that was so up in the air. And during the course of the evening, the positions were changing all over the place. And Borussia Dortmund drew 1-1 with PSG. Now, that was the perfect result for Newcastle. But they had to beat AC Milan at home. And they lost 2-1. And they are out of Europe altogether. They don't even drop down into the Europa League. Now, in the space of a couple of days, England have lost 2 of their representations in the Champions League. And it's now down to Arsenal and Manchester City. I can't remember the last time we lost 2 teams in the group stages. I remember one, but when was the last time we lost 2 teams in the group stages? And not only have we lost them, we've lost them from Europe altogether. Both teams finishing bottom. Now, in comparison to Manchester United, I think Newcastle, they kind of get a little bit of a squeeze, should we say. They were in a ridiculous group in comparison to Manchester United. But should they have finished bottom of that group? I don't think they should. They had it in their hands in many respects a lot of the times, but they started off brilliantly. You remember that result against PSG at home and everyone was like, wow, they're going to be a big problem, this season. And of course, they were, a dubious penalty away from beating PSG in Paris. But ultimately, they haven't gone through. And you're looking at it, and PSG qualifying second place on 8 points. That is awful. But Newcastle finishing bottom, only won 1 game. Home form was a big problem. Not winning the rest of those home games. And that would have been enough. They beat AC Milan and, my word, they go through to the knockout rounds. That's how mad it is. Yeah, it's absolutely staggering when you look at it. And I think as well, if PSG would have won with Milan win and then Dortmund would have gone out, it's like such a mad group. But Manchester City, they won their group. Barcelona won their group. Atletico Madrid, they won their group. Real Sociedad, they won the group as well ahead of Inter Milan. So what's very interesting is who could Arsenal and Manchester City get in the knockout rounds. Now, for people that don't understand the rules or the permutations, you cannot draw aside from your own country. So Arsenal and Man City cannot meet. And you cannot draw somebody that was in your group. So Arsenal can't play PSV and Manchester City cannot play RB Leipzig. So the potential opponents for Arsenal and Man City are who finished second, bar themselves and who was in their group. Copenhagen, PSV, obviously for Man City, not Arsenal. Napoli, Inter Milan, Lazio, PSG, RB Leipzig for Arsenal, not Man City, and Porto. Now, when you look at that, there's some big names in there. I'm seeing Inter Milan fans saying they want Arsenal. Listen, give me Inter Milan. I honestly think Arsenal can beat any one of these teams that finish second. Absolutely no doubt at all. I think Arsenal are in and amongst 4 sides that can win the Champions League. Arsenal, Man City, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. I think those are the 4 strongest teams in the Champions League. So it's going to be very, very interesting, that's for sure. Now, we're going to briefly move on to the Europa League. I'm so grateful that we're not Thursday night football anymore when I look at some of the names of these teams, and you all know about my pronunciations and everything else. But we're going to focus on the English sides because they've all navigated their way through despite Liverpool losing. But one thing I will say, I did see this offside decision, and I've got to ask, how on earth has that not been given as offside? But listen, it is what it is. The job was already done. It's never nice losing, but I don't think Liverpool are going to really be bothered about it too much when you think about it. West Ham, 2-0 winners against Freiburg. Very comfortable. They win their group as well. But the big game for me was Brighton against Marseille. And Brighton won 1-0. And I'll tell you something, Brighton topping their group, when you look at the teams that they had, that was supposedly the Europa League group of death. But they've navigated their way through and won the group. And in a selfish way as well, I'm watching that game and seeing how strong that Brighton have had to go, how much they've had to put into that game. And they've got Arsenal on Sunday. It's perfect for me. It's perfect for Arsenal. If we don't go and win that game and, you know, play on the fact that they've been playing on Thursday night and they put so much into this, yeah, there's a big problem. So for me, it's the perfect time to be playing Brighton after this. This wasn't a game where they could just go and rest everybody and they didn't really care in that respect. Rangers, they topped their group as well. So it's, you know, a clean sweep for the British clubs in that respect. But West Ham, they topped their group ahead of Freiburg. 15 points, 5 wins, 1 defeat. That's a brilliant, you know, campaign for them. Liverpool topped their group ahead of Toulouse. 6 games, 4 wins, 2 defeats, 12 points. So that's a good one for them. And then you're looking at Brighton. Like I said, they were in a group with AEK Athens, Ajax and Marseille. And that victory wins them the group ahead of Marseille. Ajax have had a terrible season all round in just the league and everything. It's the name, and you know, you look at that on paper and you think, wow. But yeah, what a brilliant performance by Brighton to win that group. 6 games, won 4, drawn 1, lost 1, 13 points. That's fantastic. Really, really good, to be fair to them. And yeah, they go through to the knockout rounds. And listen, it's the English sides in the Europa League that are helping the coefficiency with English, you know, football, and the fact that we're looking to get 5 teams available and 5 spaces available, should I say, for the Champions League next season. And Manchester United and Newcastle have done absolutely nothing to help our causes. At the moment, we sit 3rd. I don't know what the actual coefficiency ranking is after this round of fixtures, because I see it after the Champions League games. But at that time, England were in 3rd place. And it was Italy and Germany in the top 2 that are going to get, you know, 5 places in the Champions League next season. So there's plenty of time for it to change around. The further these teams go, if you win the competition, etc., it's going to help. But Manchester United and Newcastle haven't helped our cause at all. So it's an interesting one. But that takes me on to the last point, and it involves Newcastle. And I'd love to get Newcastle fans, you know, opinion on this. I would really like to know where you stand with this situation, and fans in general. I'd like to know your thoughts on this one. But looking at Newcastle, looking at what's happened, you know, with their, you know, Champions League campaign and everything else, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking to myself, how long will Eddie Howe be in a job for? How long until the owners say, you know what, you've taken us as far as you can, but we're going to make a change? And the reason why I say this is that Newcastle were kind of taking one step forward and two steps back if you're getting into the Champions League and then you're not getting into the Champions League the following season. Now, they've got every, opportunity to get in the Champions League. But when you look at their league form, you look at where they are in the league at the moment, they're 7th. And you look at the teams that are fighting for the top 4, you've got to say that I don't think that they will get into the top 4. And I don't think that they will qualify for the Champions League. The fact that they dropped out of Europe altogether and not even into the Europa League is something as well that the owners will look at and say they're not happy about, because that's another avenue back into the Champions League. If you go and win that, they could have literally thrown all their eggs in that basket and gone, 100% at it. And teams in the Europa League, they would never like to go to St. James's Park and play them. It's going to be a difficult game. But I've got to ask that question. Does Eddie Howe continue with Newcastle next season? Will the owners turn around and say, thank you, you've done everything you can, you've got us to this point, but we feel you cannot take us any further and we need to make a change? I honestly think that with these owners, they would do that. They don't seem to be the type that would sit back and just let this continue. They seem like ruthless owners that would make a decision what they feel is in the best interest of Newcastle. And I know that Newcastle fans love Eddie Howe. I know that Newcastle fans fully appreciate everything that he's done. And he's done an unbelievable job at Newcastle, don't get me wrong. But there comes a point where you say, one step forward, two steps back. You can't qualify for the Champions League and then the following season, you're not in the Champions League. That's not why these owners invested in Newcastle. That's not why these owners are putting all their money into Newcastle. They want Champions League football. They want to win the Champions League. They want to win the Premier League. And I know Rome wasn't built in a day, as they say, but I just feel they're going backwards. And if they fall out of those top 4 places this season, they've got no Champions League football next season. Could it be the opportunity for the owners to say, thank you, Eddie, but it's time to move on? It's an interesting one. Like I said, I think he's done a brilliant job, but will these owners look at it and say, thank you, but no thank you? And you've got to look at their recent form in the Premier League as well. And I know they've got injuries and everything else, but it's the manner that they're losing games. They're losing games heavily and they're looking poor. They're looking out on their feet. And does this AC Milan game just kind of give another, angle for them to go, yeah, sorry, thanks, but no thanks? So it's an interesting one, like I said, and I'd love to get the thoughts of Newcastle fans on that. I'd love to get the thoughts of fans in general on that one. Do you think Eddie Howe will be out of a job at the end of the season and Newcastle will go with a different approach? So let me know in the comment section. So listen, that is it for today's DT's Daily. As usual, let me know in the comment section what you feel about all of the topics today. Champions League, Europa League, Newcastle and everything else. If you're new around here, hit the subscribe button, smash a like on this video, and I will see you lot soon. I'm out of here.